Hello, it's Marcia Regan here, founder and owner of Gloria True Colours. And I wanted to come in here today to introduce you to a beautiful client of mine, Rolinda. Just to give you I think actually you can learn something from Rolinda because I get a lot of questions and it's really hard to kind of understand what is it that Marcia does. What happens if I work with Marcia? Because our human mind wants us to know. Like I've had people ask me, so what are the results? When am I going to get them? I want them now. And it doesn't kind of happen like that. There's a process. So I was speaking with Rolinda and she very kindly agreed to say, look, I'd love to do an interview and share my experience about where she was, what happened and where she is now. So over to you, Rolinda, to start off.
Well, welcome. And I'm so honored to actually be able to spend a few moments again with Marcia, but with you and explain kind of my journey. And the fact is that my journey very much could be your journey as well. And that is, I am a professional artist, but I'm also a creatrix. And in the world, I'm going through this evolution process of actually unfolding into this higher being that I've always, as a child, had an inkling was there, but as an adult, the pollution of the world and the process of growing up kind of beats us out, it beats us down. And at this point, I no longer allow that to take place, but in the process of this unfolding into this creatrix being that I am, I need help and I need friendship and I need sisterhood. And Marcia has, hearing my story, she raised her hand and said, I might be able to help you, Rolinda. And so I said yes. And we spent some time together. And what was so fascinating is that the key that was unlocked for me was this moment of forgiveness. And it is so critical. We all make choices in our lives, and it doesn't matter what those choices, how they impact us. Ultimately, we have to look back over our past and let go. Because in order for us to take on this new being, we have to let go of the old. And Marcia was there to just remind me and help me, actually gave me some tools, some very specific tools to help me start on that journey of letting go of the past so that I can embrace this new future. And it was so critical. It was almost as if it was the very first step that had to take place. And it is still unfolding. I'm in the process. I've been called to create a movement, and it's called Orchid Stories, the Orchid Stories movement. And it's all about hope and love. And ironically, or amazingly and beautifully, orchids are involved, which it just blows my mind. But in order for me to step into this new role, I really needed some coaching and some help. And Marcia was there to give that, just to kind of untap that path for me and unlock it. So I am guessing that Marcia might have some other questions for me that can actually stir. It looks like we're frozen.
Yeah, no, it's come back again.
There you are.
Yeah,
I can hear you.
I was there for a minute.
There we are. This will be the opportunity to use editing skills to
No, do you know
but
what?
you looked beautiful.
We keep it as it is because that's the thing, which I'm really glad that you brought that up about editing skills. So the thing is about the women is that we want everything to be perfect and we can be so hard on ourselves as women. And the moment that we embrace and look at our own imperfections that really are only our guides, and the moment that we give ourselves permission for things to just be as they are, is the moment that true freedom and liberation comes. And so what would you say, Rolinda, was probably so you had all the knowledge of the systems and you knew what to do. What was the thing that was still kind of holding you back from really experiencing the abundance and the life that you knew, and the opportunities, I suppose, because you knew they were there, they were coming to you, you were an intuitive. What did you get from that?
I think really the big turnaround for me was letting go of the old self and stepping into the new. And it is a process. Like, I am still working on this. And I think the thing that I'm learning, the deepest lessons that I'm learning is actually we cannot do it alone. We cannot do it alone. This journey is meant to be a group effort,
Yeah.
which is really kind of scary sometimes, to expose the fact that I'm struggling or that I've had a hard time. And again, you saw something in me that was like, come over here. We can work on this together. And I think that really is the key. Is that answering your question?
Yes, yeah. And then allowing the support, actually
Yes.
also knowing that you are good enough to receive that support, that you are good enough to actually experience your soul's calling that was whispering to you and was saying, yes, you can do it. But then when we're in our old story and old identity, then we can't make the transition into the true identity of our soul unless we do the inner work. So what has life been now? If someone was there and in a position of going, they've tried everything, they have, they've done all the courses, they've read all the books, they've done it all, and they're still really they're not where they want to be. They're not where they believe they should be. And I don't like the word should, but I think it could be. What advice would you give to someone like that? And then to say, God, now, and again, more work, to work with me. What advice would you give?
So I think the critical part, what I have noticed, is that you actually can mirror. I will say something and you'll be like, you'll pick it up and you'll repeat it back to me, and I will actually be able to see it. But then you'll be able to kind of take it to a higher level, and that allowance to be able to step into the new path. So what I find fascinating is it takes so much courage to take that next step.
Yeah.
And what I am finding is that I have to step into the darkness. And what you're doing, Marcia, is you're shining this little light right in front of me and say, look, it's still safe in the dark. Because there's this little beam of light. Like, just go a little bit further, take the clue that's been given and take the next step. And that is specifically what you were able to do when we did our really concentrated work. What was fascinating, and I love this aspect, you actually record the meditation session that we did.
Yeah.
And then I was able to go back and replay and relive. And every time I would get into that place of darkness, I could then shine that light again. And it just became this anchor for me. So what's so beautiful is, even if it's a concentrated session, that hope and that liveliness is there to kind of keep feeding and feeding and feeding. Because every turn you take, you still have to step into more darkness, and you need that hope and faith in order to move forward. And that surrender, we keep talking about surrender. Oh.
Yeah.
Do you remember when we were little children? And I don't know, for me, you have your parents trying to teach you how to float on top of the water.
Yeah.
And your parent is like holding you up, your back, just that little hand, and slowly the hand, slides away, and you don't even realize it, and you're still floating on the water. Marcia is that hand.
I love that.
Yes. You just need the extra little, like, you've got this, you can do this. We're designed to float on the water. At least I am.
Yeah.
But we need that coaching, that little bit of support that can allow us to actually step into our full potential.
Beautiful. I love that analogy. I absolutely love that analogy. And so the coaching as well and the energy work, because the two side by side, I think, is probably the differentiator of the kind of work that I do, because it's the healing. So, and the coaching that comes with that. And I really feel that it's channeled. It's not me, it's channeled through me. And I'm able to see, I have developed these intuitive abilities now, doing it for over 15 years, of I'm able to see and hear and sense what is going on, that, you know, sometimes we can't see our own what's going on for us ourselves because we're too attached to it. But if you have, like, the fact that I can mirror, it's exactly like that. And I love that analogy about me. And it is exactly that. It's just like, yeah, you're doing it, you're doing fine. And then you go, you're doing it on your own.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. We need this work is not meant to be done alone. I think that is the whole point of this.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Oh, thank you so much. I hope that has inspired our viewers to just kind of be reminded about the path and the journey. And if you are ready to be held by me, there are many different ways of working with me, then just reach out at support@gloriatruecolors.com. And I would actually encourage you also to follow Rolinda, because Rolinda has do you want to share a little bit more about your mission of what you're doing now with your orchid book and a little bit of the story behind that before we finish?
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. I have a dear friend, Stephanie, and she is going through the process of journeying with stage 4 breast cancer. And in so many times we're asked to witness something excruciating and painful. I can't change Stephanie's journey. I just can watch it. And being the witness, I felt quite paralyzed, and it was so disturbing and upsetting that I couldn't change her story. And I asked the question, what can I do? And instantly a divine idea came that I could gift her an orchid. So I went to my friend's orchid nursery and they educated me about orchids. And I took a very special orchid to Stephanie that could actually journey with her through the process of her treatment, because it's just brutal. And as time would go by and as she was going through this journey, that orchid was able to be there, opening up just a little bit of hope, a little bit of love with each blossom as it would bloom. And the purpose of the orchid is the blooms last so long and they're so exquisite and so beautiful that it would just give her a little bit of hope and love through this process. And gifting the orchid, being in the nursery, being around the orchids, my heart felt a little bit better. And so I asked the question again, what can I do? Because it didn't feel like it was enough. I was still hurting and I wanted to do more for Stephanie. And I'm like, oh, I can paint. I'm a professional artist. I oil paint. And I have a very unique technique called Bella Rota, which means beautifully imperfect. And so I used that experience, those gifts and talents that were given to me, to go back to the nursery. I photographed 45 orchids so that I could paint orchid portraits. So one plant, one painting. And it was a very intimate experience for me. As I would paint each one of these orchids, my heart started healing and I started feeling this expanse of love for the orchids, but for Stephanie. And I felt better. And the more I painted, the better I felt. And so I got to thinking, the next question, what can I do? And during one of my meditations, as I was thinking about my orchid story, as these orchids felt like they were healing me, the idea right in the middle of my meditation was, I wonder if others have orchid stories. I didn't define it. I went out on Facebook, social media, and I asked the question, do you have an orchid story? And tons of stories of hope and love inspired by orchids came flocking in. And so beautiful. And I became the guardian of all of these stories of hope and love. And I couldn't just sit there and consume them myself and feel, and every time I would go paint at the studio, I was thinking about Steve and Karen and Candace, all of these different people that shared their stories. And I thought, I have to do more. What can I do? And so the idea came to create a book with the portraits and with these stories and dedicate it to Stephanie. And so that is what I did. And in the process, making a book is really hard. You have to leap, and it takes a lot of financial commitment and honestly some guts to put it out there, because imperfect action, there will be errors, and I have to publicly say, this is my expression of love, as flawed as it is. This is my love, and this is the love of all of these other people, including the orchids. And what ultimately happened is Stephanie has shared her orchid story, as well as the lessons that she's learned from cancer. And it's exquisite. I think so many times we want to run away from our pain, and what Stephanie teaches in her story is that we need to surrender to the pain, because the pain actually is the teacher. And ultimately the outcome doesn't matter. And she really goes deep into this concept of live or die. The outcome, she still chooses to have joy, to be happy, and how that impacts the people around her. And what ultimately has happened is I financially, and thank you, Marcia, because I've been like so gripped with fear around money that I couldn't take the courageous step that I was called to do, and that is create this movement. And the only way you can do that is actually by being, I had to become a true guardian of these stories and have this story printed overseas, so that now 1,500 people can receive these stories in a book form and have it touch and change their lives and inspire, because the whole purpose is we all have a story, but until we share it, it's as if we don't exist. And even more so, when a story is told, it needs to be heard, because that is the cycle of love. We have to not only speak it, but we also have to hear it. And so we honor each other. We create legacy with each other and connect our stories as we hear and listen and share. It's this exchange of sharing. So I said yes to printing this book when I had not a dime, not a dime. And it has been because I didn't have the financial means to just do it myself. I have had to be extremely brave and say, come with me, join this movement, tell your story, hear the stories, listen to Stephanie's story. And what's ultimately happened is we're doing a huge book signing party on April 9th for Stephanie, and she's signing the books. We're throwing this fun party for her. And I asked Stephanie, like, what would make this party really meaningful for you? And we decided that we would actually raise money for Roberta's Legacy, which goes in and comforts families dealing with breast cancer. And they're there to help with all of the little comforts and needs when it's such an excruciating thing to deal with these hard catalysts, these traumas that come into families' lives. And it's a very local kind of thing, and they have supported Stephanie. They have given love and honor to Stephanie. So what has happened is, because of Stephanie's journey, Stephanie is now impacting and changing the lives. And she's this bridge between Orchid Stories and Roberta's Legacy. And so Roberta's Legacy and Orchid Stories were partnering together to actually bring hope and love into people's lives through stories.
Absolutely beautiful. So where can people buy this book?
So go to orchidstories.com, and there's a website. You can actually pre-purchase your book. and support and actually have an impact in this life, this world, by absorbing and taking in these stories into your own life and adding more hope and love and inspiring you to then tell your story. So orchidstories.com.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you hit on actually a lot of knowledge there about, you know, sometimes it's not about us. We can really be in our smallness, but, you know, when we get out of our own way and when we allow ourselves to be supported first, specifically as women, because we think that we've been conditioned that we have to do it alone, and we have, we can't be seen to be weak if we ask for help. But you asked for help, you showed up, you took aligned action by your guidance. So you just followed the guidance, which is exactly what I teach. And it's the same like in every aspect of life. And then you see, when you take an aligned action, that look at all the lives that you are touching, just literally by being brave enough to step into that expansiveness of your soul and your gifts and your mission, which I know it's really just the beginning. It's really just the beginning. So thank you so much, Rolinda. I hope this inspires you watching this, that, you know, if Rolinda can do it, if I can do it, because I'm showing up in my business, I'm being visible, doing this video, even for me, like when it comes to a testimonial, I'm always nervous about it, but I'm doing this to show you what's possible. So sometimes we've got to get out of our own way, and we have to step out and be raw and be vulnerable and be bright and be beautiful, because that's what we're here to do ultimately. And this is what we're here to be. The being is about living from that place of joy. So I'm wishing you an amazing day. And if you want to reach out with me and just to have a chat, then it's support@gloriatruecolors.com, and we can arrange a conversation. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.